Today the topic is reskilling data talent, and that's what we are going to get started with. Uh, if I can ask for a quick show of hands, how many of you have been in data jobs for 15 years or more? Just raise your hands. Oh, fantastic. Quite a bit of you, right? So one thing you will all agree with me is that the pace of change has been quite rapid, right? Especially the technology change has been quite rapid. And but as they say, right, today is the slowest day of the rest of your life. And that's so true with generative AI coming in, the pace of change is only accelerating, right? If you look at the last 15 years, has been about big data going from experimentation to creating pockets of value to scaling with cloud. Now we are going to see next is that AI powered by big data is actually going to drive the business processes. See, we are all data people here. There are a few things we all can feel good about. We as data professionals have been fueling processes. We have been fueling decision making and experience while continuing to evolve on technology skills. But how many of you believe that our reskilling today has to be at multi-speed than what we did in last 15 years, right? And that is what this session is all about. Reskilling is not new to us, but today the reskilling is not just about pivoting to new technology. It's about, if you look at, for example, there are new approaches, new architectures that are bringing data for AI and AI for data, as we say, all of them together, right? And you would have heard that quite a bit of that in the keynote this morning when we talked about how data and AI is coming together. So, I will actually go ahead and start talking about in terms of just take an example to talk about what has evolved. Now, I believe that all real life examples actually always tell a data story. So we'll take one example of customer experience, and and this is one of the very critical KPIs for any retail bank, right? And if you take customer experience, if I put it very simplistically, it is about the level of intelligence that the bank has on the customer and how it uses it to personalize offerings and services for the customer, right? And then of course, all of that has to be powered by underlying data, enterprise data that is connected. And relationship managers play a very important role in customer experience KPI. And this is just a simple depiction of how relationship managers' interaction with customers has changed over time. I will go through my personal example. So initially, I liked relationship managers because they never bothered me, but I could still go to them to sort out, let's say, account-related issues, right? But then after that, they started selling things to me and things that I did not need, okay? And they wanted to meet me every now and then to the point that it started becoming annoying. But then there was something that in India that came was this banking at your doorstep service. And see, I come from the land where a tap on an app can get you grocery in 15 minutes, but it still takes me an hour to go to work, which is just 6.5 miles away, right? So the doorstep service was a very attractive proposition, okay? And they could get me cash too. So of course, I started feeling obligated to reciprocate to the relationship managers. But then everything got digital, including the wallet. And I did not need a relationship, I did not need a physical bank to provide me services or someone to come to my doorstep. But interestingly, something else also changed during this time. The relationship managers became a lot more educated about me, my investment style, my spend pattern, how my spend pattern was evolving over time, and that changed my outlook towards them. And I today, for example, I feel very important to understand and learn about their insights and their advice, and I take that into consideration in my investment decisions. Right now, if you look at it, that everything that I spoke of so far in terms of how my experience has changed is also a function of how the data and analytics technologies evolved, right? How the underlying data platform comprising both structured and unstructured data got more connected over time, right? But now the connectedness of the platform also increased the complexity of the platform, and that meant that skills needed to develop, run, and enhance those platforms also evolved, right? So take for example a data engineer pivoted from ETL skills to big data skills to cloud DevOps to today creating data products, right? Now, before I go to the skill pivot and what that skill pivot is, let's quickly talk about what is changing, right? So, of course, the need for real-time insight is increasing with time. And when we talk about, and of course, there are across different industry, there are so many different examples. If you take banking, one of the good examples will be fraud prevention. How do you prevent fraud? And that means that you need to have real-time insights. And when we talk about real-time insight, we are talking about the data that can be, you should be able to integrate and process data real-time as well. Self-service has been an ask for a very long time, and now with data products and data marketplace, it seems to be moving towards a reality. And everything that I'm talking about here are today enabled by all the different emerging data platforms like Databricks, right? Now, you take, for example, if you take Databricks as an example, we are talking about data intelligence platform, which is actually built, enabling the whole concept of the unified data platform that we talk about, how you bring data and AI together, and is actually then helping in faster insights. The whole Unity catalog that we talk about is actually enabling the catalog automation, and that in turn is enabling the marketplace and the self-service, right? And then if you go to from here, if I go to the right, then you look at, take for example, co-pilots, right? Now, co-pilots are becoming, are of course emerging. You talk, let's say take Databricks, you're talking about Databricks Assistant, for example. Yesterday, the same place in Theatre 3, same time, there was a session by one of our Accenture colleagues, Teresa Tang, which talked about all the 42 Gen AI interventions that we are bringing in data supply chain, for example, right? And then, of course, unstructured data, which has finally got a seat on the table thanks to generative AI. But when we talk about unstructured data, now there is something to think about in terms of governance, right? And that is changing quite a bit because enterprises in the past have thought about governance more in terms of structured data. But now how do you start thinking about governance of unstructured data? That is coming in. And then the whole synthetic data is as real as it gets, right? So that is another thing that's emerging quite a bit. So these are just some of the changes. And if I go to the pivot now from here, what is the pivot? The pivot is about, first, let's take data architect as an example. Now, data architects have to start understanding the, the whole frameworks. There are various different frameworks to actually ingest, curate, and process unstructured data, right? The data fabric is becoming, the data fabric architecture is becoming mainstream, which means that, they have to start understanding, the whole considerations that they can use to decide whether to virtualize it or physicalize it, and those decisions have to be made by data architects. Then coming to vector and graph databases, which are going to be pretty much part of any modern data platform going forward, which means that they need to learn how to design with these technologies as well. And then the whole integration of different foundation models and data architecture, that's another area of expertise that they have to build. Open table format for easier data sharing across diverse data ecosystems is again something which is becoming very important, and that's an area that they have to build expertise in. And then one of the areas that data architects did not worry about in the past is FinOps. But going forward, with the cost of compute being the major consideration and the performance, they have to start thinking about FinOps, right? So that's another area that has to start coming into the architecture that is being built. Now, if I take data engineer, for example, we talked about some of them on the left hand side. So let me take a few things on the right hand side, right? I think the most productive data engineer of tomorrow is one who knows how to get the most out of a co-pilot or the Gen AI intervention or Gen AI agent that's available, right? Which means that the prompt engineering is going to become a very important base skill that they have to build. Then performance engineering, I talked about the whole FinOps aspect and the performance. So the performance engineering is going to be one of the big areas of focus for data engineers and how to build expertise in that. And then the business domain expertise was always important, but now we are talking about, of course, the whole business aligned data products, etc., that are coming in, that this is only going to become more important to make sure that they're building that that expertise in business domains, right? In management or governance, maybe I can just take a couple of examples. So we all know that in the new world, the semantic layer, building that, the quality semantic layer is becoming very important. And when we talk about that, things like knowledge graph, etc., become very, very important. So any management and governance professional has to start building skills in knowledge graph, for example. I was talking to a few clients, it has come in discussion with a few clients on the AI assurance, that the governance professionals going forward will also have to start looking at AI assurance, because what is the data that because the AI getting embedded with data in a data platform, what is the data that I am training with, what are the risks and what are the considerations? So that AI assurance is one other area that they have to start building expertise in, right? So now, having said that, what is and this is by the way, this is my last slide, and the question is that, what does it finally mean for an enterprise and how do you prepare yourself for that? This is, this is a trend that we actually caught in Accenture about 18 to 24 months back, and we have been aggressively transforming workforce since then. Now, we did that, in 3 simple steps, right? And that's the framework that I'm just talking about here. So the first, of course, is to develop that workforce strategy, to really start looking at in terms of what are the trends that we are talking about, right? We talked about few trends, and then once you look at those trends, and then you define the goal for your workforce, and then you say, okay, you know what, I have to, of course, start looking at in terms of what is the journey of each of these the people and the roles that are there. And then once you have that workforce strategy, then you go and start looking at what is the work that we are doing currently, what are the current roles, and how do I then from here move to the target, what is the gap that I have. Once you have identified the gap, then it comes down to, then we actually went ahead and defined all of these different learning paths, right? And then this is something that we in Accenture, we call it R12 framework. Anybody is more interested, I can spend time with you later to explain that in more detail. But it's basically, if we have to take any of our clients to become an AI first organization, what are the roles of the future that we need? And that's really where we are talking about R12. There are 12 roles in data and AI that we have defined, and 53,000 plus people that we have in data and AI in Accenture working today are all actually across this different, 12 different roles, right? And then once we define those roles, and for those roles, what are the different learning paths that we need so that they are actually equipped to do that. So once we created those learning paths, then it comes down to, how do you blend that with the online classroom and then different experience, including metaverse, etc. How do you come up with that whole training program, right? And this is what we have done to actually transform workforce over last 18 to 24 months, right? And we in fact have worked with a few clients to take the same framework and actually work with them on that journey as well, right? Okay, I think we are right on time as well. Thank you very much